Hello, and welcome to the Brad Beldon Show, your go-to podcast for all things roofing, the latest buzz in San Antonio, local politics, and just about anything else under the sun. Today, I'm excited about our guest today, David Taggart, founder and CEO of A5 Roofing and the host of the infamous Roofing Underground podcast. David, welcome to the Brad Beldon Show.
Thank you, Brad. I appreciate you having me here.
David, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into the roofing industry and how you came about starting A5 Roofing?
Yeah, so I got into the roofing industry just a few months before all the COVID lockdowns, and so it was
a great time.
What a great time to get into door-to-door sales, right? Like that was
and when pricing skyrocketed, right?
And pricing went
and we
through
couldn't
the roof.
get materials,
and we couldn't get materials, right? And people were holding on to their cash because they were afraid of what was happening in the economy. So I figured, why not walk away from all the security that I've built and get into this industry. I was already working as an entrepreneur. I had a small, company doing remodels and handyman type stuff. But I felt like there was more opportunity in the roofing industry and especially in door-to-door sales because I could determine how much money I was going to make. And I had $200 in my bank account and I just took a gamble. And
did Jackie approve that gamble?
This was before Jackie.
Oh, okay.
This was a few years before Jackie. And so
you didn't have to get approval from anybody.
Yeah, no, it was just me and two kids.
Yeah.
And so
because everything goes through Susan in my house.
I totally understand that. Totally understand. We got into the roofing industry. We did well, built a team with the first company that I was with. And so I really started learning a lot of the success inside of entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship, which is where I was inside of the company, right? More of an intrapreneur was in the leadership and the personal development. So I really started working on that and trying to teach and gained a lot of success from there and learned a lot more about running a business and ultimately started A5 Roofing because I realized in the local roofing industry that I was in at the time, there was a huge cultural problem. There was a lot of things that were lacking. Everybody was making money, but nobody was teaching their employees how to be very good human beings. And so we decided we were going to be a personal development company that happened to build roofs as well. And so we took kind of a different approach to it. But that's why we started the roofing company. We realized we wanted to impact more lives and create more successful leaders inside of our community. And we couldn't do that unless we were actually calling all the shots.
So it's interesting. You and I share that common theme in that Beldon, we're a customer service company that happens to sell roofing.
That's right.
Right. And that's a different approach. That's not the same mindset. There's 90,000 of you and me across the United States. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be like everybody else. You don't want to be like everybody else.
Correct.
If we're like everybody else, we're just a commodity product.
That's right.
And I think that what you've done with A5 Roofing in such a short time frame is just astounding, and something you should be very proud of because this industry is cutthroat. It's difficult. It's 24/7, 365, and you don't know what tomorrow will bring, right? I mean, look at yesterday. We set a record rainfall in San Antonio, and what happens, right? Then the customers are calling you. You gave proposals 2 months ago who didn't want to do anything months ago, but now they want you there today.
Now everybody's leaking.
Right. And so it's a very interesting dynamic that we have in our industry. And with your time in the industry, what have you seen evolve, or the latest trends, technologies that are being adopted throughout the industry? I know you're on so many social media platforms, and you and I we comment a lot on all the different influencers and all the different industry trends out there. What are you seeing that's shaping our industry, that's changing our industry, that's evolved, that will make it different for the next 5 to 10 years?
I think I personally think technologies is going to play a huge factor in shaping the way that the roofing industry works. We're seeing it already at my level, and I'm sure that technology is far different when we're talking about huge commercial roofs and stuff. But at the level where we specialize in, we're seeing the ability to create proposals and get them out to the customer with as much detail as possible and as fast as you possibly can. Because if we look at the way consumers are spending money and the way that they're acting, Amazon's ruling the world. Customers get exactly what they want as soon as they want it. And so if you can fit your business model inside of that, take the Amazon blueprint, mix it with a little bit of Chick-fil-A, and then combine that together, get your product and service out the door faster than your competition can, chances are you're going to win the race.
You're just stealing all my content, right?
Hey, listen, success leaves clues. Okay.
I
Success leaves
No,
clues.
you're right though, because it's the Amazon wow. If you order something from Amazon and it's not in your inbox in 15 seconds, you're hitting the refresh button.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you didn't make a mistake, right?
Yeah.
Amazon has taught us that things need to be delivered timely and accurately, and it's that level of satisfaction that's just instantaneous, right?
Right. Well, that brings another problem too, because also in the industry, you're competing against other service providers that are trying to rush to that same endpoint. They're trying to get to the same goal. And so not only is it the technology that you have to have in order to beat other people to the finish line or beat your competitors to the proposal, but you also have to have something that's going to be different, right? Like you can't just have an estimate. You can't just have a good proposal sent across, but there has to be something else because other people are sending proposals to your
Right. It's
customers
the
as
same
well.
thing, right? They're both getting a piece of paper.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing the same thing. So what really makes you different, and that's what kind of sets you apart, in that.
So you mentioned Chick-fil-A, and I don't know if you saw the piece I wrote on Chick-fil-A the other day. How does an organization that sells fast food at $15 an hour have a level of customer service that's second to none? I mean, how do they do that? And how do we bring that into our industry?
Um, One of my mentors, a guy named Jake Bryden. And Jake is the owner of Heritage Roofing and Construction. We actually went to high school together. Wild story. I didn't connect for 20 years until after high school. Um, Jake said the other day something that really resonated with me. He said, "People don't want to hear you speak a sermon; they want to see you live one." And so Chick-fil-A does a very good job of indoctrination inside of their culture. They do a very good job of hiring the right people for the right places and then building them up as leaders. Good leaders inside of your organization will take care of your customers the right way.
And I believe you on that. I mean, even at $15 an hour, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing when you drive through that line, and it's my pleasure. And the article that I wrote the other day was I was at the Houston Hobby Airport, and then I didn't get enough ice, and I love ice, and I didn't get enough ice in my tea. I love iced tea too. And so I went up to the counter and I asked the lady at the counter, could I trouble you for some more ice? And she looked at me and she said, "Sir, could I also add some more tea? It would be my pleasure to add some more tea to your drink as
Yeah.
well." I'm like, I'm in an airport, right? And I'm getting the level of customer service that's just astounding.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to be there, right? On a Sunday afternoon. I didn't want to be there. And yet she made my day because she was so nice. And you just don't see that in the customer service industry anymore. And you and I are faced with the challenges of a customer wanting something instantaneously
Yeah.
and a workforce that's changing, that they all want to be the president of the company on day 2 of employment,
Quick.
right? And so how do you it's a difficult balance. And I think that, one of the challenges that you and I face as leaders in our organization is how do you balance that? And how do you separate yourself from other people in the industry that are trying to do the same thing?
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult. And I think you've just done a phenomenal job of that.
Appreciate it.
And I applaud you for it. And I think that's one of the things that sets you apart at A5, right? You've taken on the big boys in town, and you've done it without attacking. Some of the other companies that have come into town have attacked the legacy companies,
Right.
but not necessarily the big boys, but companies that have been around for 75
Sure.
plus years.
Yeah.
And you've done it with grace, and you've done it professionally. And so what would you say, other than that customer service, what sets A5 Roofing apart from everybody else in town? Because you have such a loyal following, you have such a loyal client base, you know, and in only a short amount of time. And part of that time frame was during COVID. So how did you do that? How did you go about building such an incredible organization?
Oh man. So we're still working on it, right? We're not done. I think that every business and every organization goes through time periods of change and adaptation and stuff. And so we're still trying to be fluid so we can respond to different things in the markets, right? Winter brings slower lead generation, historically lower sales in the winter because people are holding on to their cash. So you have to kind of be able to move and plan for those things. And at the size that we're at, two people get sick for a week, that's a big impact on the company,
That's
right?
huge, right?
That's a huge. When there's 7 employees, it's a huge problem.
I don't care if
You know,
there's 100 employees.
yeah,
I mean, most of us are pretty lean.
yeah, sure, 100%. So you have to really figure out what it is that makes you separate. And so we looked at the restoration process from roofing from our customer standpoint. And my background is in construction. I've been swinging a hammer since I was 16 years old. That probably shouldn't say this on the air, but the first job I ever had at 16 was framing houses for KB Homes. you know,
That's
uh,
actually where
pro-
my
probably
grandfather started was with KB Homes.
probably broke some child labor laws there that summer, but I worked for cash, picking up nails and rafter hangers, joist hangers around the job sites. $25 a house is what I got paid to clean up.
But see, he was on the predecessor to KB Homes. He was with Ray Ellison. You don't even know that name.
Wow.
You're too
No, I
too
do
young
know.
to
I
know
do
that
know
name.
Ellison. Yes, I do. We've worked in San Antonio for quite a few years.
And so how have you applied what you learned doing that to making A5 different in this marketplace?
So the construction stuff for us was real easy. We know how to build things super well. And so we really taking a look at the customer experience and engineering our entire process backwards from the final completion of the project to the moment the customer says, I think I have a problem. And we map that entire process out so that everything is ran efficiently. We teach all of our staff to be project managers first because that's where the customer care really comes from. And we educate and empower our customers from day one with options. We don't just come in and say, well, I'm the roofer and I know what needs to be done and here's this is because in the grand scheme of construction, there are multiple ways to fix a problem. There's not just one way. There's a code compliant way to do it, but there's different methods of getting to that solution. And so we need to take into consideration what our customer wants, what our customer can afford, right? Where they're at, because you can't afford a $30,000 roof if you can only afford a $3,000 repair, right? Unless there's some nuances, insurance involved, things of that nature. But really taking a look at the customer experience and engineering our entire process to benefit the customer. For us, the profit is a byproduct of great customer service. We'll make money as long as we focus on this side of the business.
So you talk about your experience with KB Homes growing up. Don't you think, and one of the things that we talk about here is you could have two track homes side by side,
Mhm.
same exact floor plan, everything the same workers on both homes, and yet they're not going to be the identical product.
Correct.
And the customer's expectations in our business, it's so high, and you and I are probably at fault for that because we drive high
Sure.
expectations. And so how do you go about, and I know you probably don't sleep at night because you probably have the same problem I do because your expectations are off the chart. How do you balance that high expectations, high quality, and the customer is thinking about these high expectations to meet or exceed those expectations is virtually impossible, right?
It can
And
be very difficult.
right, because you set the bar so high. So
Mhm.
how do you get your team to understand that when you set that bar at 5, they got to find a way to get to 6?
Correct. You have to. So one of our core values is intentional impact. And so we look at the same way the lady at the Chick-fil-A in the airport when you said, "Hey, I'd like a little more ice in my drink," right? She said, "Can I also it would be my pleasure to add some more tea." So take one more step, right? It's not going to cost us it cost her probably 0.035 cents to put a little extra tea in your cup. But the impact that it created, you remembered that and you walked away from that experience and you said, I can't believe that I asked for A and I got A and B, right? That's that
And I had a
intentional.
good day
And you
because of
had a
it.
good day,
Yeah.
right? And so creating that intentional impact, being intentionally significant in the people's lives that you're able to connect with is for us, that's the goal. That's we look at our core values and we have, 3 foot by 3 foot canvas paintings of all 6 of our core values inside of our office for that reason. So every time people walk in the door, they understand that discipline equals freedom, that hard work is mandatory, that life requires effort, and we have the discipline, the excellence, the service, the integrity. We have all these core values on the wall, and people know this is the standard that we bring, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that we meet or at least try to exceed that standard in the most we can.
You roofed the wrong house yet?
I have not done that yet. Nope.
We have, but
It
that,
happened to my sister 2 years ago.
yeah, it's no, you take all those things that you talked about, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, we still work. We're all human beings,
Yeah.
and we still make mistakes. And I think what separates good companies from not so great companies is how they handle those unexpected consequences. And how do you go about handling situations that caught you completely off guard?
I'll give you an example. Last year, we built a roof in Bulverde, um, and the lady that owned the home, I did not know that she followed me on social media. I had no idea until I had never met her through the entire work process. Our project managers cultivated that relationship. They handled all the material selection and everything. I did not get an opportunity to meet this homeowner until the night that the project manager called me and said, "Hey, the afternoon." He said, "There's a 5% chance of rain in Bulverde, and all 5 of it's dumping on top of this house right now." And I said, "Is the roof dried in?" And he said, "They're 90% done with the dry in." And I said, "I'm on the way." And so we got to the house. The craziest little thunderstorm I've ever seen in my life drove right through this neighborhood and then disappeared. And the sun was still shining while it was raining. That was the picture that my PM sent me. And so I got there, and the whole second floor of this gable to gable ranch style home had puddles of drywall damage all the way down the ridge line. So it was the ridge, the last piece to get dried in. And we got into the house. So walked in the door, and I said, "Ma'am, hey, I'm Dave Taggart." She said, "I felt like you were probably going to come by today." And I said, "Absolutely. Anytime one of my customers experience something that we have in the back of our mind is a horrible possibility that it could happen, right? It's my job to show up and get involved at this point." And so we walk through the house. I start photographing everything. We're talking about all the water damage, the fans we're going to have to pull in, the drywall we're going to have to replace, things like that. And I'm totaling all this work up in labor and materials in my head. And on the way out, I asked her, I said, "Can I ask you a quick question?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, "If this was happening to any other homeowner, they would be like panicking, freaking out, and concerned right now. Can I ask you why you seem so calm about this? I'm just for my own edification, my own education. I want to learn." And she said, "David, I follow you on social media." And I was like, "Well, I did not know that." She said, "Yeah, I watch your podcast. I follow you on social media. And I knew when I called you guys that if
You're
anything,"
famous. And what'd she say?
she said that I knew that when I hired you guys that if anything were to ever go wrong on my house, you would absolutely take care of it and stand behind your work 100%. And I said, "Good. Then what I'm telling people, the version of me that I want to be, that I want people to be able to interact with, is exactly what they're getting in the marketplace."
But that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. We work with human beings.
Yeah.
People make mistakes. The
Things happen.
companies that come and correct it,
Mhm.
what we tell clients when it happens to them, right? And
Yeah.
and you don't want to be them, right? Because it's just a statistical chance that it's going to happen on your house.
Right.
But when it does, it's 100% them, right? And so your ability to diffuse the situation and walk the customer through, we tell them, look, we think that you chose Belden because you knew that if this happened, we would stand
100%.
behind it. And I think that you had the same experience with A5 with your customer. She felt comfortable knowing she didn't make a bad decision. She knew that if something went wrong, and the odds are there, something's going to happen on somebody's house,
Sure.
and you took care of it. And so I think that says a lot about A5 and you and the company that you've built. Um, I want to turn a little bit towards the story that happened 2 weeks ago, or close to 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
when I reached out to you, and I was devastated by what I saw online, and you and I, growing up in this industry, although you clearly were a felon by working at an age that you weren't allowed to, although I was here at 12 too, so.
Yeah.
Um, but I only got to cut the grass. I
That's
didn't get
right.
to do anything else.
Yeah.
So you had a fire. You and I are in this industry. You and I work with insurance companies day in and day out.
Mhm.
You and I intuitively, when we get to a job site, we're looking for safe things. And that's how we view the world. And yet, in one of your posts, when you had the fire, one of the comments that caught me off guard and made me even think about it was, I didn't have a big enough fire extinguisher,
Yeah.
right? But you and I demand our crews have a big enough fire extinguisher, and we don't even think through how it could impact us. I know it's difficult to talk about it, but how can we help customers and other people that are watching? What are the things that you learned from your bad experience? And I know that you've put in many of your posts, it's just tangible and it's just a house. But I believe that that house, you made it your home
It's your home.
and it's personal.
Yeah.
And so you're out of that house. They've taken everything of yours away, and somebody somewhere in the United States is cleaning your
Somebody
personal
has
stuff.
all my stuff.
so it can't be easy.
Mm.
I mean, Susan and I went through. We were about a month into our house, and we had mold about 20 years ago, and we went through something similar where they took everything and they cleaned it, but we didn't have a bad, frightening experience where you could have your family could have perished. You got out of the house safely. You talked about how you cut off the oxygen to the fire. Walk us through what happened that you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And what would you tell people to be on the lookout for, the lessons learned? Because you can't turn the clock back, but you can help.
No.
Hopefully, we can help people going forward.
Yeah, can't change it moving forward. The first thing that really stands out to me is number one, you have to have a conversation with your family and your kids, especially about emergency safety. We literally had this conversation, Brad, a week before.
But in your comment, it sounded like the kids didn't take you seriously the first time.
No, they didn't.
They thought you were joking.
They didn't. I heard some popping in the garage, and I thought maybe I left the garage door open. I knew there was high winds and weather coming, and the wind was blowing like crazy that weekend. And I was standing in the kitchen. All the kids were in the living room. My wife was in the living room. The baby was on the floor playing. It was a normal Saturday afternoon at 4:28 p.m. And we had just had ice cream delivered from Uber Eats for the kids that afternoon. So I was taking the ice cream out of the bag. The ice cream's still sitting in the sink, by the way. I went there yesterday. It's still right in the sink where I put it. I heard the pop, and I was like, what was that? I heard pop again. I put the ice cream in the sink. I went 12 feet to my right where the garage door is. I opened up the garage door, and there was 2 foot of ash and soot floating in there. It was black as midnight, and I could see a bright orange flame burning out of the corner of my eyes. I shut the door instantly, and I turned around and I said, everybody needs to get out of the house. And my wife and my kids looked at me like, Dad's doing a drill. We just talked about this last week. And I said, no, I'm not, get out.
And you only been in the house. It's a brand new house. 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. 6 months. And so everybody got out of the house. All the kids went across the street. And in my early 20s, I spent some years firefighting. Oddly enough, God gave me the skill sets I needed to do what needed to be done many years in my life prior. And, but it was wildland fire. So a little different than structure, right? But we know the basics of structure fire. And so the only fire extinguisher that I could recall in memory in my house was in the pantry, which was separated by 6 inches of drywall and wood stud from this roaring fire in my garage. The mini fridge had caught on fire, and on top of the mini fridge was a bucket with half a gallon of tiki torch fuel.
Oh.
And the accelerant, and up it went. And I run into the garage, put my shirt over my face, and I closed my eyes when I knew I was pointed at the fire because the smoke was burning my eyes. I held my breath and I just squeezed the hammer on the fire extinguisher, and I watched the fire go down to about 3 inches, and I thought, this is it. We're okay. We did it. And the fire extinguisher went empty, and it shot right back up to 9 foot. And I said,
wow,
that's it. That was my one chance. This was all I have. I cannot open those garage doors because I'm going to put a bunch of fresh oxygen in this garage.
And you probably lose the whole house.
The overhead doors. And so again, early 20s, you remove all the oxygen. That's, you have tinder and you have fuel, and then you have oxygen. And so if you can remove one of those things from the fire, this is what we do. We shut the garage door. We make sure that it's closed, and we just let it burn the garage. Don't open the doors. And we ran across the street, and my wife and my 3 kids stood across the street and watched.
But how long did it take for the fire department to get there?
3 very long minutes.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that would be like. And
Yeah.
and it's only 180 seconds, but it probably seemed like 10 minutes.
Forever, Brad. When you're watching what your wife and I built, the life, your home, your baby's stuff, your daughter's things, your my wife's wedding rings were on her dresser. You know, she had just gotten home from somewhere. She took off her stuff to wash her hands, literally walked through the garage 2 minutes before the fire, and everything was perfectly fine. And so it's when it happens and it's your home, it's just different.
So what did you learn through that process of I know you one of the posts you talked about was, suggesting that people go through their house and videotape their belongings,
After the fire. Yeah.
before
Well, I would
and
say
after.
as a good rule of thumb,
Yeah,
right? Just being in the industry that we're in, it would be a good rule of thumb to know what's in your house,
yeah. Well,
right?
to be able to document it one way, shape, or
For
form.
sure. If you're not taking pictures, once a year of what your home looks like, just in the event that something like this happens, it would be a good idea. After you call 911, obviously the first thing, get everybody safe. Don't try to fight the fire unless you've got some knowledge and experience in doing that. Just get out and get your family safe. The first thing you need to do when the fire department says you can go back in, safely find a way to enter the home if you can. If it's structure fire and it's really dim, don't go back in there. But if it's isolated, like in our incidents, it just burned and destroyed the garage, the next thing you need to do is start a very thorough documentation process. So we video recorded, walked through every room, exactly where everything was. There's soot and ash on the pillows and the stuffed animals in my kid's room. There's soot and ash on the bathroom countertops. And you just walk through and record, take photos. I must have took over 700 photos the day after the fire.
So you'd advocate that in the event that something like this happened, document, 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 document.
Document as much as you can, because it's all going to come into play when the insurance company starts adding up how much money they owe you for your personal property and your
Right.
contents.
And you have to prove that up.
And you have to prove that up. It's on you
Yeah.
as the policyholder, as a homeowner. The insurance company says, well, we think it's this, but if you have a different idea, then you should prove
Well,
it to us.
even, you and I deal with this all the time, insurance companies. 95% of those insurance companies are honest companies and they pay and there's not an issue. It's that 5% that give the whole industry a bad name.
Right.
And but even if you have a great insurance company, I still thought the comment that you made about documenting resonated with me as well. And what I was trying to understand though, do you think that it went through the attic and that's how it got into the house?
100% it did.
That's how it got through.
The AC return is just inside the garage wall,
Oh, that's
underneath
how
the
it got.
door where it opened up. And so when I opened the door, when the fire department opened that garage door, because they brought the fire hose right through the front door, through the kitchen, and it was on, brother. Like
And
it
I
was already pumping water when they were moving it through the house.
and
And
I
so
thought when you posted originally, I thought you were at a claim for a roof leak because
Nope.
the first picture was just water everywhere. And I'm like, "Oh my
My
God,
house.
he left he left a roof open." Then I realized it wasn't that. Then when I saw the picture of the attic
Yeah.
ladder, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, his house caught on fire."
Yep. Yeah.
And so the kids got out safely. Um, how are you working with? You have young kids. How are you working with the young kids so they're not scared? Um, I mean, yes, you told them about it. You told them about it was a drill.
Yeah.
You almost had to threaten to get them out of the house because they
Yeah.
didn't believe you.
They didn't listen the first time.
Hey, my kids are 23 to 29. They still don't listen to me.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give to other families about, how do you work with your kids to get them to feeling comfortable again? Because they got to be scared. Yours are so young.
That's difficult. Because there's I mean, as a parent, there's only so much you can do. Your kids are really comforted by their surroundings and their things at that age. You know what I mean? Their identity is so wrapped up at 5 and 6 years old and 7 years old in what's theirs and what makes them comfortable, that you remove them from their entire place of peace and you put them into this Airbnb we have to go live at for 2 weeks at a time. And every 2 weeks, we've got to try to find another Airbnb for 2 weeks. And you're dealing with all this stuff, and in the middle of it, your children still have to go to school. They still have homework. They still have things to do. And so right now it's really important for me and for my wife to make sure that we're spending just a little bit more time on their level. like talking and playing with them and spending just maybe 5 more minutes on the couch with them in the
A
morning.
little bit more reassurance rather than
100%,
but are
because
you ignoring what happened or are you
no, we talk about it.
yeah.
My daughter was like, you know, Dad, I've never had, one of her vocabulary words was experience. Last night we were doing homework. Experience, right? And she said, "Well, I don't understand what experience means." I said, "It's kind of like a life event." And I said, "Kind of like how our house caught on fire. That was a crazy experience, was it?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, that was crazy," you know. And so you it's not a monster that's going to come back. It is a thing that is possible but not probable, and sometimes these things happen, right? Nobody can control a mini fridge erupting into flames at 4:25 in the afternoon. You couldn't have planned for that. That wasn't inside of my schedule for the day. You know, it was just something that happens, and so you don't have a choice but to respond and react to it and to keep moving forward. And for us, it's let's be a little more intentional with the time with our kids, and let's have a conversation about it so they don't feel like it's a monster that just shows up and destroys everything and leaves, and it could happen again. Could it happen again? Yes, it could happen again. But do we learn from these situations as a family, and we have conversations about where the fire extinguishers are and which door to go out of? If the back of the house is on fire, we go out the front. The front's on fire, we go out the back.
So have y'all one of the things Susan has talked about since I've discussed this with Susan is that we ought to have a word that we use that means I'm serious.
Strawberries. We have one.
Whatever whenever you say that word, that means I'm not playing.
Dad's not kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do have one?
We do swear, I promise you.
Susan was talking about
My
that the other
My
day.
kids know when Dad says strawberries, it's like, okay, he's being serious.
So you're not going to go to H-E-B and buy strawberries then.
Strawberries.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's something that people need to understand because look, you're in the industry, you're looking for safety 24/7, 365. That's what you and I do because we want to make sure that our team members go home every night to their families.
Right.
And yet something tragic happened in your own world
Yeah.
right underneath your eyes and you couldn't have expected it, right? You couldn't have expected the refrigerator to blow up. Things happen and how do you prepare for that? And I think that's important. And that to me, that's a good lead into the next question I wanted to ask you is you have 3 little kids.
Mhm.
Susan and I, ours are out of college, thank God. But I was in your shoes, 20 years ago, um, and I know it was a struggle for that work-life balance with little kids, and I still remember us. We'd have 4 car seats if we traveled. It took us, we pre-boarded right back in the old days. Southwest, actually, I'm not sure that Southwest had a pre-boarding program, but when they saw the Beldon family show up,
Yeah.
we pre-boarded
That's right.
because we had too many kids. How do you and Jackie handle you and I? It's 24/7, 365, right? And how do you handle that work-life balance with the kids and work and trying to build a new company that's only been around for 5 years, 4 years, I guess it is.
3 now. We're in our 3rd year.
And how do you do all that? I mean, that's not easy.
Well, unpopular opinion. You don't have a choice, right? For us, I've had the conversation about work-life balance with people before, and I don't see that concept the way that most people see it. I have to spend so much time working, and I have to balance out my family life too, because I don't feel like my work is in opposition to my family life. I work for my family and for my family life, and so they're cooperative. They're not in opposition to each other. When it's time to work, it's time to work. And when my kids need me, you know when your kids need an extra 20 minutes or not. If I go in and I just say, hey, I'm only going to work 7 hours today and spend 7 hours with my kids, what if I don't get the stuff done in the 7 hours and it bleeds over into the kids? Do I sacrifice the schedule and move forward? You do whatever has to be done at that moment in time. You run a business and you have a family to provide for. You don't have the luxury of hesitation and taking a couple of hours off and then moving the schedule all the time. And so knowing that my work and my life aren't in opposition to each other, you just do what has to be done when life tells you, hey, this needs your attention. And that's, it may be unpopular for some people. I don't, you can celebrate too early, right? You get a good job. Maybe you've worked and you've made 50 or $60,000 a year, and you finally get a job at 75K, and you're like, hey, great, this job comes with something cool. And you go out and you buy a Harley Davidson that year because you're celebrating your new job or whatever. You celebrate too early in some circumstances, and that decision to not focus and say, hey, listen, I just got a 75K salary. Let me go in for the next 6 months and bust my butt. And maybe I can turn this into an 85K salary, right? There's a time to work and there's a time to play. And when it's time to work, it's just time to work.
So, so one of the things that I did, now remember, I'm a lot older than you, and so I went up the hill on the way to work and up the hill on the way
Yeah.
home
In
in the
snow.
cold.
Yeah.
I didn't have technology, but the one thing I had was a calendar, and what I tried to do was I tried to put my kids' events on my calendar and book around those events. And I wouldn't say I was great at it, but I made a concerted effort, and
Right.
I think that helped me with my work life balance.
Yeah.
And I also think having a spouse who supports you 100%,
Very
and
important.
I think is really important,
Very important.
especially because it's really hard in this industry to have a good day, right? I mean, it's so stressful.
Can be.
And to me, a good day is that we didn't damage somebody's property and that everybody got home safely. And that's really hard to think that that's a good day, but really in this industry, that's a damn good day.
Safety is the absence of risk,
Yeah.
and nothing we do is safe. I mean, we have human beings working well over, you know, let's say at the bare minimum, 12 foot, right, above the ground at any given time,
Every day.
every day, in all parts of town,
And
in
in
different cities across the
and
state.
in under different weather conditions. I mean,
Yep.
like the wind yesterday and the cold.
And you got 8 guys walking around on a roof, and there's, air hoses going left and right. How easy would it be for somebody to have an accident on job sites? It's
Even if they're
very
tied off, they can still get hurt.
still get hurt.
Yeah.
You still that fall arrestor, it stops. Like, it stops you,
Right.
and it's not fun when
Yeah.
it stops you. You feel it. And so even something like that. So knowing that you are holding a huge liability over this property that you're working on for the benefit of a customer, and you have 8 or 9 people that are risking their lives literally to do roofing is not a safe construction trade. It is just inherently dangerous.
Even in the training room, it's not
Oh
safe.
my
We still
God.
tie them off in the training room.
Yeah, you have to,
Yeah.
right? You have to. So, and knowing that it's dangerous every day, being an entrepreneur, especially in this type of construction, is like taking a deep breath and not being able to fully exhale until everybody's home and there's no other work being done and everybody's property is safe. And it's like that 8:30. That's it. That's about 8:30 for us because it's too dark to do anything else. Everybody's demobilized for the day, and we can finally go. Okay.
But I know you, and my guess is 8:30 after you put the kids to bed, you're back in the office working on your laptop.
So we still have work to do.
Right.
There's
But
still
that's
work to do.
okay. You still spent time with the kids, though.
Yeah.
You got to watch. Well, you didn't have Barney. I had Barney. That's what my
Yeah.
life was evolved around.
Sure.
I knew every Barney show that was ever put out there, and
Yeah.
I don't even know what SpongeBob now is. I don't even know what's out there now for the kids.
There's a bunch of them depending on what you want your kids watching and stuff. There's a lot of options out there now.
So, with your high expectations, um, Susan, I don't believe in participation trophies, and
Roger.
and Susan used to get mad at me because when we would go to the year end at the hamburger joint, your YMCA sport or whatever, everybody got a damn trophy,
Right.
and we would always have Marshall drop his trophy in the trash can on the way out of the hamburger joint, and she used to get so mad at me. But I used to tell her that, life is not about participation trophies. Life is about winning every single day, right? And you keep score for a reason.
Yeah.
And in what you and I do every day, you have to win to survive. And if you're not out there fighting to win, you'll be a statistic about one of the roofing companies that didn't make it, right? There's 90,000 roofing companies.
I am in that proverbial third year block where what is the statistic? Over 85%,
80, yeah, something like 80%.
88% or 83% or something go out of business in their third year. So it's like we don't see that happening, but the odds are not in our favor.
they're
right?
not in our favor at 78
I'm
years and the
telling
third
you.
generation going to the fourth, right?
Yeah.
It never ends.
Yeah. And
And
even that being a different generation of owner implies a different it that changes the course, the problematic course of success for the business. Second generation owners are statistically not as driven as the first generation. And that can even be diluted down in time unless the company culture does a very good job of continuously being poured into the people behind it. You know?
and I've seen you've got culture everywhere on social media, everywhere in your office building. Do you think that that's part of the secret sauce that you have is the culture that y'all built?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. Everybody knows what the expectation is. They know that there's that when they get A5, they know exactly what they're getting. For that, they know the people that come to work with me know that they're coming to work with me because I believe in building leaders and making successful people, not because I'm going to be extremely nice to you every day, right? Like I'm going to be
You
honest
don't need
with
to be
you.
their mother,
I don't
right?
need to be your mother, and I'm not your best friend. We can be good friends and we can work and cohabitate in this space, but at the end of the day, we have a mission, and this mission must be in the blood and breath of every person that walks in this door.
And that's one of the things that you and I share in common. My title is Chief Culture Officer, and I did that because somebody said something to me about 5 years ago, and he or she was not having a great day, and I don't remember what it was. And that night, it dawned on me that that was my fault, not their fault, and
Wow.
it was my fault that I wasn't focusing enough on the culture. It's one thing to put posters up, and it's another thing to write stuff. If I'm not acting that way,
Yeah,
and I'm not encouraging others to treat everybody the same way,
sure.
and to treat everybody with respect, and to appreciate that you're working together,
Yeah.
then that falls on me.
Live the sermon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we made that shift, it was funny because I had it on my signature title for about a week, and then I got a call from my dad. He's been working remote for a number of years, and although he calls me like 15 times a day, um, he said, "I saw you changed your title," and he said, "I want to change my title too." I'm like, "Okay, what's your new title?" He said, "I'm head coach," and it resonated with me, right?
I
Because
love that.
he has been coaching us for a long time, and he's been coaching us to be that next generation
Yeah.
leaders. My brother and myself, and I think that when you look at the business that way, and you look at it differently, that it that culture is so important that that neither one of us will be a statistic, right? Because there'll be people that will want to work with us, and to provide customers with a level of service that they just can't get elsewhere.
Right.
Doesn't matter if we've been in business 78 years and you've been in business 3 years, we still share the same common vision. You're not going to get a better product from anybody else.
I refuse to be second.
Right.
Yeah, I can't be. If I
So-
find out my competitors
So should
doing
I have gotten
something,
you a participation
that's it.
trophy?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I was absolutely inspired by your comment about, your son would throw it into the trash. I thought how resilient of that young man to look and say, you know what? I didn't win. And I had this conversation with my daughter a few years ago. We were in the backyard and she was losing to her little sister in soccer. Casey is a bull in a china shop and she will collect a personal foul. Like she is not afraid of fouling out of a game. Kennedy, on the other hand, is very delicate, a little more, precarious. She's having a tough time losing soccer to her younger sister. And I told her, I said, Kennedy, you need to understand something, that when you are competing against other people, somebody will win and somebody will lose. It doesn't mean that you are a loser. It just means that you didn't outwork that person that day. And she's like, well, then how do I beat her? I said, you have to get smarter than her. You have to work harder than she does. And you have to figure out what she can't do and what you can do. She was like, okay, let's think about this. And we were able to work through that just by maybe changing her mindset a little bit about how she thought about winning and losing, and understanding that this happens. People lose and people win. And it's your job to decide what side of that line you want to be on, and then do everything you can to stay on that side of the line. In business, Brad, you know this, if we look at data on a chart, we're either going up or we're going down. We live on the side of a hill 24/7. We have to pick what side of that hill we're living on. And we have to try and control that as much as possible, because there are winners and there are losers in business
Every day.
every day.
It's your story with Kennedy resonates too, is that at the back of our driveway, we had some thorny bushes under the basketball goal, all the way across to cover the fence line. And Marshall was shorter, and Marshall would come in for layups, and I would foul him. And sometimes he'd go into the bushes, sometimes he wouldn't. And he'd come inside, and he'd be all, thorns and a little bit of
Yeah.
blood here. And she's like, they're going to call Child Protective
Right.
Services on you. I'm like, no, they're not. We're playing basketball. And until he learns that he can't drive in on a guy that's 6 foot,
Correct.
and he learns how to shoot from the outside, he's never going to be good. So we kept working on that skill. And one day I came home from work, and every single plant was gone. She cut down everything to the ground level. And
That's still her baby.
And I said, what's going on with the bushes? She said, I was tired of watching you push him into the bushes. I'm like, but I'm trying to teach him to hit an outside jumper. Well, he learned how to hit the outside jumper because he got to keep the ball every time he scored, right?
Sure.
And then when the Final Four came, he entered the 3-point shooting contest in middle school, and he beat the high schoolers.
Wow.
Because he learned
Hard
how to
work.
get really good at that skill.
Good.
Right? And only because he learned that he couldn't drive in, right? And in our businesses, we learn how to get really good at roofing, and we get really good at customer service. And the other stuff, we don't really have much control over it, right?
Right.
We just have to live with where everything else happens in this industry, because this industry will eat you up.
And it changes every day. Legislation changes the way that roofing works. Your city local ordinance changes every 4 years. If you're lucky, they have every 4-year update on code provisions and things. So you material prices change from day to day, and you have to kind of be paying attention to all that. But at the end of the day, the only thing that like you said, you can't control is what the customer experiences and what you leave them with when you're gone.
So I want to let you get back to work, but before you leave, I'd like to ask you, what's the biggest takeaway that you could leave our listeners with today on building successful companies? And if somebody else wants to try something like what you and I have done, what would be that takeaway that you would give them?
Start from the inside. The first people that you have the ability to influence is the people that you're dealing with on a daily basis. Whether that is, you're a small entrepreneur and it's your customers, those are the only people, that is your direct area of influence. And so you have to learn to influence those people. If you have a team of employees inside of your business, they're servicing your customers. You are servicing them. That leadership has to kind of come from the inside a lot of times. And then by proxy, learning how to impact people's lives to the best of your ability, and whatever it is you do will create more opportunity for you to resonate or to redistribute more impact to more people. And so I think if I was trying to give advice to somebody that wanted to start a business, it would be what else about your product, right? Because everybody sells shoes, everybody can sell doorknobs. There are lots of people out there that are opening food truck businesses, right? And Asian food or Chilean food or Japanese sushi truck or whatever the case may be. The food is different, right? The food can be the thing that separates you, but why your sushi truck? Why should I go to your sushi? What is the experience that I'm going to get? What can the customer gain from having your food? Taking an example from Chick-fil-A, right? Everybody knows it is a smooth process. They're in and out. The food consistently tastes the same. It's not the greatest chicken in the world, guys. It is not the best tasting food in the world. I'm going to be honest with you, but people don't go there because the food tastes amazing. This is the greatest chicken sandwich of the world. They go there because they know the experience that they're going to get. It's going to be consistent. The food's going to be the same. They're going to get what they feel like the value they're paying for, and they will come back time and time again for that exact same experience as long as that experience stays the same. So don't tell me about your chicken sandwich because it's not about a chicken sandwich. Tell me what makes your business different. And if more entrepreneurs can figure that out faster, then they get to stand out faster. And I thoroughly believe something that we've adopted in our marketing is not to be the best roofing contractor in San Antonio, because there are a lot of fantastic and phenomenal roofing contractors in San Antonio. We decided to be the best well-known roofing contractor in San Antonio. And so if we can be the best known and we can spread our area of impact farther and farther by doing exactly what you're doing here, podcast, telling your story, introducing yourself to customers that might not know you, this is what creates people's desire to say, I want to do business with a company like that. Let me call them when my roof leaks.
David, it's been a wonderful experience. You're welcome to come back anytime that you want.
I'd
Very
love to.
invigorating.
This is an incredible space.
You're full of energy, lots of great stories. Um, I don't know if you've seen the Chick-fil-A video, Everyone Has a Story. It's about 2 minutes long. I don't know how many times I've seen that. It's just incredible.
With the employees?
It's about the customers.
The customers.
Yeah. And I cry every time I see that video, and especially about the little girl part. But it resonates because if you don't approach a customer the right way, you have no idea what's going on in their life.
None.
And it could be you can make their day or you can ruin their day. And hopefully, the way you and I approach the world, we'll be making everybody's day.
That's the goal.
So, David, thanks again for joining me today on the Brad Beldon Show, your go-to podcast for all things roofing, the latest buzz in San Antonio, local politics, and everything else under the sun.